Welcome back to another exciting episode of RX Muscle's History of Bodybuilding. Joining me, as always, is John Hansen. And John, more sad news in the bodybuilding world. The blonde bomber, Dave Draper, has passed at the age of 79 years old. And he was a very well-known, well-liked bodybuilder throughout the ages, back all the way back to, I guess, Arnold's day. He was in the 1967 Mr. Olympia competition, I believe, where he placed fourth. And I brought you in here because you're our go-to guy when it comes to the history of bodybuilding. You really can't be too sad when a guy does live to an older age. Obviously, it was sad that I know his health was declining. Lou Ferrigno had called me and FaceTimed me about an hour ago and told me of the passing of Draper, and he said that he had tried to get him to come to a show 3 years earlier, and Dave was just not, he was in a wheelchair and he wasn't really doing appearances. So I have to imagine his health was in decline.
Yeah, I think he's been having heart problems for many, many years, and his heart just eventually gave out. He actually had congestive heart failure like 20 years ago.
Oh, really?
So he's been going through that for a while. But Dave was really beloved in the bodybuilding world, not just for his physique, but also just for his personality. He was such a kind person. It kind of reminded me of Bill Pearl, just very giving and very nice. I met him at, I believe it was the Arnold Classic, I think, it was the year my first book came out, and he was just very supportive of it, and just such a great guy, the gentle giant, So I think a lot of people in the bodybuilding world are really missing him today because he was such a great legend.
At 21 years old, he won the Mr. New Jersey, which just goes to show you how long the Mr. New Jersey show has been going on.
Yeah.
That was like, way, way back. I had to be in the 60s. And, I didn't even, sometimes we can't even fathom that, bodybuilding was, I can't even imagine how it was held back then. It was probably like in some little gymnasium, with probably one light shining on the
yeah, that's the way they did it. Yeah.
We're talking about it as if like it was a big competition today, but there was probably like 10 guys in the whole show,
Yeah, they would always hold the weightlifting or the powerlifting before. And I heard stories from like Boyer Coe and guys from that era. They would get on stage sometimes at 1 o'clock in the morning after all the weightlifting was over. And exactly, they would hang the light bulb off the basketball net. And that's where the guys would pose. It was really, really ancient.
And think about it, these are like the legends of bodybuilding. We're performing under conditions like this, and
I know.
It's amazing that they even were able to become what they became. With the lack of promotion.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we got a good
right. It was probably like a little like clubhouse almost.
Yeah, right. It was terrible.
I'm sure when they were out under that one light bulb posing, they probably in their wildest dreams could never imagine or fathom that the sport would be where it is today, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah, Dave was super popular, though, back then because, I don't know if you know this, he was working for Joe Weider at his warehouse out in, I think it was Union City, New Jersey.
The weightlifting, the Weider barbell, right?
Yeah, the Weider barbell, and Dave got a job working there, and Leroy Colbert was there, and Dave would work out with Leroy Colbert on lunch hour, and Joe Weider would work out with him too. So Joe started advertising him in his magazines.
Wow!
And it was funny because he would always picture him on the beach. Actually, he lived in New Jersey, but he was supposed to.
The warehouse was in New Jersey at the time.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's funny.
And then Dave eventually moved to California when Joe moved out there in 1965.
I got you.
And Dave was working out at the, they called it the Dungeon. It was like the original Muscle Beach. It was in Santa Monica, and it was under the pier. And Dave was working out there, and then the city of Santa Monica closed it down, and that's when Joe Gold opened up Gold's Gym in 1965.
Wow.
And then Dave started working out there, and then Dave competed in the very first, where they had the very first Mr. Olympia in 1965 that Larry Scott won. Dave won the Mr. America that night.
Oh, that's great.
So, and then the next year in 66, he won the Mr. Universe. So he was one of the most popular bodybuilders. He was like Arnold before Arnold. He was the blonde hair, blue-eyed, 6 foot tall, muscular giant who was on the beaches with all the girls. And everybody wanted to be like Dave Draper and Larry Scott. Those were the
Right.
two most popular bodybuilders back then.
And he even was in a few Hollywood movies, I believe, right? I think he was in that. One of my favorite like TV shows growing up was The Monkees. Remember The Monkees?
Yeah, he was in the Monkees, right?
He was in that. I remember him being in an episode of that, right?
Yeah, he signed a contract with MGM Studios in '67, and they featured him on the Monkees. He was on the Beverly Hillbillies, and he was in the movie Don't Make Waves with Tony Curtis, Claudia Cardinale, and Sharon Tate. And Sharon Tate, of course, was the famous girlfriend of, or the famous wife of Roman Polanski, and she was the one murdered by Charles Manson. Well, Charles Manson's family.
Did you see that movie? Did you see that movie, Once Upon a Time in L.A. by
in Hollywood? Yeah, I love that movie.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Yeah, that was great, right?
Yeah, I love that movie. Yeah, I saw it many times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a bizarre movie, but it was very well. I thought it was very well done by.
I did too. I love Tarantino.
I think Quentin Tarantino said that's his last movie, right? Isn't that what he said?
Yeah. He's got one more.
He's got one more coming out.
He's got one more. Yeah.
That's right. John is the expert on the movies too. We got to get that title.
We could do another segment on movies.
Yeah. Now, you know what was interesting about Draper is that he looked amazing into his older age. If you look at some of these older pictures of him, he looked almost better than he did when he competed.
Yeah, he was always in great shape, and he was very lean, very vascular. And
was he like one of these guys like Ferrigno who just like still eats his tuna and rice every day and reads the magazines? Was he one of those guys?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, Dave just lived that lifestyle because he loved working out. He started working out when he was like 9 years old at home, so he just loved training. I think he was going to the gym when he was 12. So he was one of those guys that just loved the feeling of training.
That sounds like you, John Hansen.
Yeah. Yeah, I can relate to that.
Yeah. Now, he did suffer, I think, for a number of years with alcoholism, didn't he? I think he overcame that at some point.
Yeah, his last show was 1970. Mm-hmm. He competed in a couple of shows that year. He did the NABBA Mr. Universe in London against Arnold and Reg Park, and he got third. And a lot of people thought he should have beat Reg Park.
Yeah.
And then Dave was one of the 4 guys that took the plane from London to New York to Columbus to compete in the Mr. World. I don't know if you ever heard that story.
I think you told us, but tell it again.
Yeah, so Jim Lorimer was promoting his first bodybuilding show. Well, it was one of his bigger bodybuilding shows. It was the Mr. World contest, and he was holding it with the World Weightlifting Championships in Columbus, Ohio. Mm. And actually, that was the contest where Vasily Alexiev from Russia broke the record and lifted 500 pounds over his head.
Oh, I didn't know that he did it in Columbus, Ohio. Wow.
Did it that night, yeah.
That's crazy.
So he wanted to hold a bodybuilding show, so he was going to hold an AAU Mr. World contest, amateur and professional. Mm. And he called up Arnold, and Arnold didn't know Jim Lorimer at the time.
Right.
And he said, I want you to compete in my contest. And Arnold said, I can't because I'll be in London that weekend competing in the Mr. Universe contest. It's the same weekend.
Right.
So Jim Lorimer said, if you can get to Heathrow Airport Sunday morning, I will make sure that you get out to Columbus, Ohio.
Right.
So it was Arnold, Franco, Boyarko, and Dave Draper caught a plane at Heathrow Airport on Sunday morning. They flew to New York, and then they flew to Columbus. And I think with Jim Lorimer being with the FBI at one time, he must have had some connections because Boyarko told me they didn't even have to go through security. They
really? Oh, that's
right
funny.
There, So,
I forgot that Lorimer was connected Jim to TV.
Yeah, he was in the FBI. Yeah. So Arnold was so impressed because he had ABC Wide World of Sports there, and that was the first show that Arnold beat Sergio, and he was on TV on ABC Wide World of Sports and everything. So he told Jim Lorimer, he said, man, I am so impressed how you organize this thing, how you organize the flight from London over here.
Yeah.
And he said, when I stop competing, I'm going to start promoting shows, and I want you to be my partner.
That's where that all came from. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, so Dave was part of that. So Dave went in that Mr. World, and then Dave competed in the IFBB Mr. World, which was held with the Mr. Olympia that year.
Right.
And Dave beat out Rick Wayne and Franco Colombo in that show. That was his last contest.
I think is that the Mr. When then he said he did the Mr. Universe tall class too. I think that same year, NABBA. He was third.
That was the one where he lost to Arnold.
And, that was that one. Okay, I got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was in London. Yeah.
Interesting. Then he retired, but then didn't he sue Joe Weider at some point?
Yeah, many years later, he really got ripped off by Weider because he was working at the warehouse for peanuts, and Joe's using them in his magazines on the cover.
People don't realize, first of all, guys had no way to make money back then, bodybuilders.
Right. So Joe's making all this money off of his products, using Dave as the cover man and the guy in the ads and stuff. And Dave wasn't getting paid for any of that.
That's crazy.
So somebody talked Dave into suing Joe Weider later on. Mm-hmm. And so they sued him. They went to court, and it looked like he was going to win. Like he was going to win a substantial amount of money from Weider because they had witnesses and stuff, people testifying for him.
Yeah.
And then Dave took a settlement. They settled out of court for probably a fraction of what he could have got. So unfortunately, he didn't get the money he should have gotten.
Do you think he did that because he felt loyal to Joe, or what? What do you think?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, Dave was that kind of guy where maybe he felt he didn't want to rip him off too much, or I don't know.
It seems like Joe always had a way of connecting with these guys and saying, "Look, I gave you a chance. I put you on the cut." Like he makes these guys feel guilty almost about it.
Yeah.
Which is he was a slick business guy, Joe.
Yeah.
So.
But Dave was also a furniture maker. I don't know if you ever heard. He would take the wood from Santa Monica Pier, and he would make beds and he would make couches. He made these huge wooden beds for Arnold. He had Arnold's furniture in the late 70s was all from Dave Draper.
Oh, really? You know who else did that? David Paul, one of the Barbarian brothers, he said when the Santa Monica Pier burnt down, they had this pile of wood there. It was all, and he went there and hand-picked out pieces, I guess, and he made a bedroom set out of it that people were offering him tons of money for it, like thousands and thousands of dollars, and he wouldn't sell it. And I think, unfortunately, I think his ex-wife wound up taking it from him, like when they got separated. But yeah, I had never until you told me. I only knew that David Paul was the only person who did that. Is that what they were doing? They took the old wood and they made furniture out of it?
Yeah, that's what Dave Draper was doing. And if you ever see pictures of Arnold in the late 70s, his bed is huge. It's got this, it's a huge wooden bed. It's got a wooden frame around it,
David Paul's thing was he used no nails. He made notches. It was all notched together.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. I don't even think David ever took a single class on how to build that. He just did it he was intuitive. Yeah. So that's interesting.
Great artist.
I wonder what those bedroom sets, if they're still out there, must go for now. They're probably worth a fortune,
Yeah.
Old Santa Monica Pier, underneath the old Santa Monica Pier, or underneath the Santa Monica Pier now is almost like a little animal museum where they have it like a sea museum. I had gone there several times before, where you can kind of pet the different wildlife that's indigenous to the California coast there. I wonder if that's where the gym was under there.
Yeah, I wonder. Yeah,
you walk down underneath, and there's a bunch of little stores there now, and that was the whole. I bet it was right there. That must have been awesome. Yeah. What a great. That real estate is probably worth a fortune right now.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Probably back then it probably cost them $100 a month rent. No one wanted to be there. What do you think Dave Draper will go down in the annals of bodybuilding history as, in terms of his accomplishments and what he'll be remembered for most?
Well, he was kind of before my time, but I mean, the people that always came before me that I always talked to, they always said Dave was like their idol, and I think he inspired a lot of people because he was the main guy in the magazines. And like I said, he was the, 6 foot tall, blonde hair, blue eyed guy. And he was in the movies and stuff, but he was also really a great writer. And one of the last interviews I had with Peter McGuff, Peter said that Dave was the best writer in bodybuilding.
Really?
Because he said Dave wrote from his soul. He exposed it all. He really put everything on paper. He was a very soulful person, very sensitive person. He wrote 4 books that are available on Amazon if people want to check them out. Right. And they were all about his connection, his spiritual connection to weightlifting.
Wow.
So, he was a real artist, a real, sensitive, great soul. And I think that's why people loved him so much. He was more than just a bodybuilding icon. I think he was just a really great person. And that's why people love Dave Draper so much, the people that got to know him.
Yeah, well, Peter McGuff gave him that compliment, and Peter was one of the best writers, of our time.
Yeah, most people would say Peter was the best writer, but Peter said that he loved Dave's writing more than anyone.
I think Peter was more prolific in the sense that he wrote more than Dave did. Like Peter was like a regular, he's been doing it. He wrote more, bigger body of work, but I think that maybe Draper was more in terms of the potency of what he wrote. Maybe that's what Peter was talking about.
Yeah.
Because I think as a writer, and I'm, you're a writer, I'm a writer. I think that you have to look at two aspects about people writing ability. Can you do a lot? Can you write a lot and write a lot on a regular basis? And I think that that's what McGuff did really well.
Yeah.
Ron Harris is, I got to give him credit. I've never seen anyone crank out more articles than Ron Harris. He's very prolific. And then there's guys that have a depth of what they write about that's just very potent. It really touches your soul almost.
Yeah.
I'm sure Draper fits into that category. I'm trying to think of other writers in our industry that were like that, but
Rick Wayne was really good when I was growing up, and Jack Neary was really good. Those guys were good writers. They were very talented writers who were writing about bodybuilding.
Romano's a very good writer. He gets
he is.
He has his own style, but I mean it's potent, and that you want to read it, in a sense, and he can capture the energy of what he's writing about, and so look, he's going to be missed. Obviously, this is not as sad of a tribute as some of the other people we've lost recently in the industry. We've just lost 3 other ones earlier this week. But it's nice to be able to reflect on his life and all the accomplishments he had. And he will, as we always say, be remembered and not forgotten. And John, thank you for joining us today and looking back at the life of Dave Draper.
Absolutely, Dave. Pleasure being here again.
And that'll take us to the end of another episode of RX Muscles History of Bodybuilding. I'm Dave Palumbo with John Hansen. We'll see you next time.